Listen to the radio, Harry and Edna's Wireless Show. You heard it from the Three Bells.
You're early.
I was. I thought they'd finished.
You missed your cue.
Oh, shall I start again?
Hang on.
Watto, Harry.
And Watto, Edna. And welcome to Harry and Edna on the Wireless as we bob along, actually on a glorious sunny day here in the Solent while facing dear old England.
What ho?
And welcome to Harry and Edna on the Wireless. And it's kind of fitting today because this is what we've been doing. We've got today Michael Brown joining us in the, I would say in the studio, but he's actually on tape. But we did record it in a studio. And he's talking about historic gardening. A man that gardens in his turga. Now, the quality is not great on the recording. It's when I wasn't very good at doing sound recording.
In your early days.
But it's so interesting. We wanted to play them, so we are going to play that. But I said I haven't actually been doing the garden. I've got eldest son doing the gardening. You decided to drink coffee and just relax and sit in your little office.
Paint the wrong picture. That was today. I was drinking coffee and looking through my office window. But previously, we did a little bit of historic gardening ourselves, didn't we? Because as we've alluded to on many a previous show, we live in a very beautiful Victorian house, and so we find lots of interesting things in the garden. One of them we think was the old outside toilet wall, but there we go. So we've decided, eldest son has, that he wants to dig up half of the corner of the garden that's still a little bit wild and turn it into a victory garden.
Vegetables. We're going to have plenty of vegetables, which is actually great because, the sustainability thing and climate change and all that sort of stuff really fits in. But is he going to do it in a turga?
Well, I don't think he is, but he certainly had to get you attacking the undergrowth with your, what was it, pickaxe?
Yeah,
it was a bit.
And people, you missed a treat because when I do gardening or housework, I tend to wear various articles of clothing that I last wore in the 90s. And I've obviously bulked out with muscle and stuff because when I was swinging said pickaxe, my shirt ripped, just like the Hulk.
Yeah, he did his Hulk impression. But what I think it's more to do with is the fact that you keep your clothes until they're falling apart, and they were so threadbare that it finally gave up the ghost as you swung the pickaxe over the top of your head down into these shrubs.
Shrubs are gone, and so is my rather nice 90s check shirt made in cheesecloth. You don't get clothes made in cheesecloth anymore.
You don't. That shows signs of its age, doesn't it? And
I saw either saw on the internet or I listened to it on the radio. 90s clothing are really big now, really big in the retro scene. And here's me just trashing a wonderful 90s cheesecloth shirt by getting vicious with me undergrowths.
I know.
Right. Shall we play? Anyway, what are we going to do? When are we going to play Michael Brown? Shall we have a little bit of George Formby first?
Yeah, why not?
And then we'll have a bit more chit chat, and then you can go and help eldest son rip out some more shrubbery.
What ho?
That was George Formby with Hitting the High Spots, and I must say, Harry, I don't think I've heard that one before.
Well, we have had it in the Harry and Edna on the Wireless music collection for quite a while.
I just don't recall it.
I do like a bit of George. I do like. We went to a festival many years ago, and there was a George Formby impersonator, and he was really good.
He was.
Now, I have a question for you. Mm-hmm. Just so you know, dear listener, we record these shows, but they don't necessarily go out in the time that we record them. And at the moment, it's spring, and it's a beautiful sunny day. Mm-hmm. And there's me in me ripped shirt looking all muscly as I'm ripping out shrubbery, and you're sitting in here wrapped up in a blanket.
No, it's only because it's one of those where it's been a lovely spring day, it's been gloriously warm, and it's so lovely because all the leaves are coming through and it just feels like everything's fresh and new, and it's been beautifully sunny. But the minute the sun goes down, golly, does the temperature drop and it gets chilly. But anyway, you operate at a different temperature to me because you're sat there in your shorts and T-shirt, and I've got long trousers on, a cardigan and a blanket over my shoulders.
Well, that's what I'm thinking. Today's been one of the record days for
I
temperature.
thought it was yesterday.
No, because
No.
they said it's the hottest
East-
Sunday
Yeah.
this time of year.
Ah.
And it couldn't be yesterday because yesterday was Saturday.
And you were down the beach, naughty monkey, while I was at work.
Well, it was
It was a beach day, was it today?
Actually, if you follow me on, if you have Harry and Edna on the wireless, actually, I didn't post on Harry and Edna on the wireless. I posted it on Instagram, and where Harry and Edna presents. If you want to follow us, I did a poll where I said, do I stay in and continue restoring the Victorian tiles, which I never wanted to restore in the first place, but you insisted I did, or do I go to beach?
Yeah.
And everyone said, go in the sea.
You lucky thing. You're mad not to take up the opportunity, I think were several of the comments, weren't they?
Exactly. I couldn't disappoint the public.
I don't know.
The people have spoken. We had a referendum and they said go to beach.
Instead of getting down on your hands and knees and grouting Victorian tiles. I don't know. What's wrong with you?
It could be worse. I could
Yeah.
be having to double dig and prepping the vegetable patch, which I've got an
Yes.
awful feeling might be coming around once we get rid of these.
Yeah. I'm afraid it's one of these where our son starts off the project and we end up finishing it. Rather like his mother, I think.
You say we?
Yeah.
No, I.
No, I start them off and then hand them over to you. So I'm the instigator and you're the completer finisher.
Yeah. And now you're going to make me listen to the wonderful Michael Brown.
I think so.
Who's going to be talking about his vintage gardening.
In his
Historic
toga.
garden, not vintage, historic, isn't it? And he goes from Roman, I think we go from Roman right up to Stuarts. He does a lot of gardening. He does
In
about
many an outfit.
300 or 400 centuries worth of gardening. And here's me just in a couple of days.
And you're already a bit broken.
Yeah.
What ho?
So we'll welcome to the show, shall we,
We
Mike?
shall.
We'll officially welcome you to the show,
Right,
Mike.
thank you.
And you're a historic gardener / garden historian.
Yes.
Is that right? And but you sort of have a background in gardening, so it's not something you've just sort of said, oh, I've got a real interest in this, I'm going to start doing gardening from a historical angle. You've actually got a whole background
Yeah, so I
in
did get
gardening.
my qualifications as a professional gardener.
And so you've been a head gardener for many, many years.
Well, quite a few, yes.
Yeah.
And then went freelance, so various other things, and worked at Malton College as a lecturer.
Oh, right,
in
yes.
horticulture.
In Northampton.
Yes.
Brilliant. So you've got a reputable background. So what you're saying is genuinely
As truthful as anybody else.
Yeah. So you recreate. Is that fair to say? Or is it right to say you recreate gardens from historic periods?
Well, I've made a medieval garden at Prebendal Manor up in Nassington, top end of Northamptonshire, near Fotheringhay. But usually I represent a particular period as a gardener.
So you go to events and you set up. We've seen photographs this evening of you dressed as a Roman with your Roman gardening implements.
And Roman clothes. And,
Roman clothes, Roman
and
plants.
A few plants and a few herbal remedies as well.
So have you researched all these periods that you recreate?
Yes, it takes quite a bit of work.
I bet it does.
I've got 2 rooms full of books.
Wow. Just on the subject of
gardening, yes.
Gosh. So did you have to do if we pick on your Roman gardening impression, did you have to then read up do you start again? do you recreate it as if you were in Rome or when the Romans occupied England?
I tend to work as if I'm in England.
Okay.
Yeah.
So a sort of occupied.
Yes. Nobody has so far has booked me to go abroad. Somewhere warmer and sunnier.
Yeah,
It'd be really nice.
wouldn't that be lovely to go to Rome and recreate it?
So I tend to represent a slave, as most of the gardeners probably would have been at the time in the Roman period. I have my wooden spade with its metal edge and a few of the other tools.
So were there...
How do you talk about the gardens? So the Romans, great gardeners, and if you were very, very wealthy, you could have wonderful fountains and water features and automata, birds would sing and the heads would turn round, all sorts of stuff.
Wow.
It's a bit difficult to do.
Yeah.
But I tend to stick to the plants and some of the remedies and things like that.
What ho?
So would they have had gardens for medicinal purposes or just because they looked really pretty and could show off their wealth?
If you were wealthy,
Yeah.
you'd have a garden just to be posh.
Yeah.
And you would stroll around that with your friends, and elsewhere you would have your proper productive gardens. And we know quite a lot about Roman gardens, surprisingly more than some of the later periods.
Oh, right.
The Romans, being quite good at getting things down in writing, had produced some estate manuals, really. There's people like Varro and Cato who tell you how to go out, position your estate next to a river, want water, preferably close to a road leading to a major town to sell your produce, how to make your own oil press, how to grow your vines, and all the other bits and pieces you need to know, and even a list of tools and how much to pay your slaves. Well, how much food to give them.
Yeah.
Pay them, yes.
Pay them.
Yes, well, gardeners never been very well paid, I can vouch for.
Did they have... did they bring quite a lot of plants with them from Rome, or did they sort of cultivate what we already had here into things that were useful for them?
They do seem to brought a lot of things over. I mean, the Romans go out en bloc as a culture, really, once they've conquered somewhere, and offer their upper class culture to everybody else.
Yeah, lock, stock and barrel.
This is what we've got. What did the Romans do for us, sort of thing? But yes, they introduced most of the Mediterranean herbs, probably onions and leeks as well. Yeah. And garlic and things like that.
Yeah.
Plus backed up with the medicinal knowledge of what the plants were for, as well as being eaten.
Yeah. I always kind of wonder, I know the Dark Ages came afterwards, but whether it was sort of really high-tech, modern as we would see it today, but in those days, whether they thought, wow, this is kind of really futuristic and, leaping boundaries with all the plants and the methods that they brought with them.
Well, as far as we know, in Britain at the time when they turn up, we don't have pleasure gardens.
Right.
That's pretty much a Roman thing, it seems, and probably one of the earliest ones was at Fishbourne down near Chichester.
Yeah.
Where the archaeologists have dug out the trenches where they laid out the hedges. It's all chalky.
Okay.
Box and things won't grow in chalk very well, so the Romans dug out trenches, put in decent topsoil, and planted the hedges in that, so we can see the shape of the hedge, even if we don't know how tall it was.
Oh, wow.
So that was a very impressive garden, designed to try to win over the local landowners to being pro-Roman. But for most people it would have been really producing food to eat for yourself. Very wealthy.
Sort of a self-supporting estate, essentially.
As it has been through most history. And then, of course, once the Romans go, then a lot of the high-tech bits go. But we have got the monasteries.
What ho?
Now, this is Harry from Harry and Edna on the wireless. And you have been listening earlier to Edna chatting to Mike Brown, who's a historic gardener. And at the moment they're chatting good and hard and proper about the Roman times. If I'm brutally honest, it's one of Edna's favourite periods as the Romans. I'm more your Life of Brian, sort of what the Romans ever do for us, kind of a chap. Anyway, they're moving on for the centuries, so later on, well, actually, straight after, we're going to play some Harry James and his orchestra in a minute. Straight after that, we're back with Edna and the wonderful Mike Brown chatting about gardening. But I get a few minutes just to hang out with you and just me and you. And I just wanted to tell you, if you do the social media thing, we're on Facebook. It's Harry and Edna on the wireless. We are the only ones. You'll find us. Do like the group or the page, whatever you call it, because we can keep you updated with all the wonderful things we do. Plus, we're also on Instagram as Harry and Edna Presents. Somebody already got a handle on the other one. And occasionally I have been known to do Twitter, which is at Harry and Edna. So all those wonderful ways if you want to do the social media with us. And if you want to catch up about this show again, or indeed all the previous shows, or if you want to listen to and download the speech-only podcast, we come to you by every means possible. Just go to our website. It's www.harryandedna.co.uk and do pop by and say what-o.
What ho?
So, back with Mike. Now, we've moved on from the Roman garden question and answer session. And other periods that you recreate is medieval... Is it sort of monastic gardening?
Both monastic and wealthy.
Right, okay. And so what would the difference be there?
Well, the monastic one would be producing quite a lot of food on the whole.
Yeah.
But they did have their pleasure gardens if you were perhaps the abbot.
Oh,
for
okay.
entertaining guests, because they might be sort of reclusive and allegedly poor, but
Yeah.
if you're on average, it doesn't apply to you.
So just for our listeners' benefit, are we talking cadfile now? That
Yeah.
sort of period? Because he's well into his
it.
plants, if I
Yeah, and his
remember,
herbs,
isn't
yeah.
it? Because
Yeah.
there's always somebody who's hurt and he comes along and
With his-
grinds up a bit of parsley and a thyme.
Thank you, Harry. But I'm assuming that's primarily, led me in nicely, thank you, to why they grew lots of herbs. It was
Yes, I mean,
for
lots of the
medicinal.
herbs do have medicinal uses, but they're still translating Roman herbals.
Because he was Claudius too, wasn't he?
He was, yes.
Cadfile was Derek Jacobi.
Jacobi,
He was
yeah.
Claudius Chappie, wasn't he?
Yeah. But
So he probably brought it over from
so
one.
he used
had
his
the script.
knowledge, did he, from one
He had the script.
character?
He said, "Hang on a minute, I remember this."
Shame about the poisonous mushrooms.
Yeah, well, because something quite interesting, people will know from Harry Potter, there is such, in Harry Potter, there's a thing called a mandrake, which you pull it up by the head and it screams and you have to repot it, yeah.
And then you die.
Then you die. But actually, there is such a thing as
It's
a
real
mandrake.
plant. Yes. It's from the Middle East, and it has a big, long taproot like a big carrot.
Right.
But the story was, if you pull it out of the ground, it screams. If you hear it scream, you'll go raving mad or die.
Okay.
So what you do is you block your ears up with wax, you tie it to a very hungry dog, and you go, "Here, doggy, doggy," with a big bowl of food, and doggy pulls it up and dies for you.
Oh, okay.
And then you have this nice root. Well, one property is supposed to be it's an aphrodisiac, but it sends you to sleep, so probably not that good. But it was also used as an anaesthetic if you could afford it.
Right, okay.
So you'd be given the preparation of this according to John Arden, the 14th century surgeon. You would soon fall asleep and your surgeon could cut you with iron and you wouldn't feel the pain. The big problem,
Right.
of course, is bringing you back round, and they recommend a big sponge soaked in very strong vinegar.
Oh, right.
A bit
to
like
sort
smelling
of,
salts.
Oh, okay. To sort of bring you round
Yeah,
from
so
your
and if you
operation.
don't come round, they probably just walk away and move
Yeah.
somewhere.
So then one assumes you come round and you then are in complete agony from the pain of whatever it is they've done for
Well, they had got opium in the country, so they're importing that.
Right.
And you can use things like hemlock as well, as long as you know what the dosage is.
Yeah.
They are, lots of these poisonous plants will numb you from pain to some extent, but it's getting the dosage right, otherwise it might be a little bit more permanent than you want it.
And I guess that's the same with a mandrake. You've got to know how much to knock something out.
Yes, I mean, it's still being used up until the introduction of modern anaesthetics, but sometimes they mix it with hemlock, the other thing, Christmas rose, hellebore.
Right.
And that's a purging plant that would make you sick or give you a bad case of diarrhoea, so hopefully after the operation you'd be sick and all the mandrake would come out of your body.
Right, okay.
What ho?
Oh, there's quite a few herbals written in the medieval period, but they're still basing themselves on the Roman ones and the ancient Greeks. But John Ardern was a very practical man. He's starting to use his own remedies. He's trying things out
Yeah.
and finding out from experience rather than just believing what he reads. I mean, by the Tudor period, Gerard said, "Well, we've dug up loads of mandrakes and nobody's died."
Yeah.
See, but I suspect what it is with the mandrake is it keeps the price up. You know, a very
Yeah.
valuable root.
Yeah, yeah,
If everybody
yeah.
dug it up, it wouldn't be worth anything.
Yeah, and you've got to put a high price on something with all the labour that's gone involved in
and
digging
the
it
cost
up.
of a new dog.
Yeah, every time. So then gardening moved on, and you recreate gardens from the Georgian era as well.
Yes.
Had things really changed much by the Georgian period?
When in the Tudor period you start getting very formal and not gardens, and as it goes through the Renaissance they just get bigger. But when you get early part of the Georgian period, that's still in place. And then along comes Capability Brown and digs it all up.
Yeah.
A bit like Dick for Victory, really.
Yeah, the whole use of
Dig up the old garden and put in a new one.
Yeah.
Yes, a lot of people say he was a bit of a vandal, but fashions come and go, and somebody else would have done it if he hadn't, probably.
And was there, in the moving through the Tudor into the Georgian period, was there as much need to be growing all these herbs and spices and things for medicinal purposes?
Yes, I mean, if you read the gardening books, you're still growing things for somebody else in the house to make into medicines.
Right.
Big wall gardens to produce the food for the whole estate. And if you look even in the Victorian period,
Yeah.
a lot of the herbal remedies are much the same.
Right, so they haven't really changed as the years have moved on.
You
It's
can still pop into Boots and buy milk thistle tablets if you want in St John's Wort.
Really?
Yes.
I guess the thing now that is people have forgotten what they are good for.
I mean, on the whole, I mean, when I was little, my mum would say, "Oh yes, you can pull off a few hawthorn leaves and munch those when they first come out. You can make soup with nettles and things like that."
Yeah.
Most people don't do it anymore, do they? They just pop down the supermarket.
Yeah, so that knowledge in some ways is
it's all written down
waning,
somewhere still,
yeah.
but
the people that
some
know
of perhaps the things that are just passed verbally from one old codger in the village to another old codger, that may well have gone.
What ho?
Now, we were chatting while that track was playing, and saying about Mike Brown talking about the use of herbs and stuff for medicinal purposes. Made me thinking, actually. I was reading, or I saw it on a news clip or something, about how during the war a lot of that had to be relearned because medicine was in short supply, and about being able to be like cadfile, and to go around herbing.
Well, I think there's so much of it that grows wild, and that was certainly something that came in during the war years, and many children or people that were children during the war recall picking the rose hips and going through, foraging through the hedges and the field boundaries just to pick things that were growing wild that can be turned into food, or, like you were saying, you could reintroduce old remedies again.
Yeah, I'm not sure about nettle soup. I've not tried it. Saying that, we did pea pod soup many years ago, and that wasn't too bad.
I've seen a nettle wine sold as well, and I just can't say I just fancy that at all.
Have you tried it?
No.
Well,
it just doesn't
just
even... The name puts me off.
But where I work, because I have to work with animals, and it involves a muck heap, we have a lot of nettles, so we could have soup every day of the week, should we wish.
We could.
I don't know, I fancy what they're growing in.
No, but I do wish I kind of wish I could learn all the many things that Michael knows. He's such a clever chap, and, he grows all sorts to turn back into medicine.
Do you know how you can learn a bit more?
Go on then.
Keep listening to us, because he's coming back on again. Yes, there's one more little interview clip with our Mike Brown, our historic gardener.
What ho?
So has a lot of your knowledge come from research and history, or is it things that you've always known that have been passed down to you?
One or two bits I remember, but mostly it's going through the books and trawling through herbals to find out what the plants were for.
Right.
Various sources just to try to find out what was being grown as well.
So I guess by the time we get into the Georgian period as well, certainly with the really big houses and country estates, were the kitchen gardens and that sort of hidden away? Because wasn't it all about statement in landscapes and things like that?
Well, you have your wall garden. It has to be somewhere, and it tends to get pushed out of the view somewhat. Yeah. I mean, sometimes as much as a mile away.
Wow.
Gardens, of course, are still doing everything by hand, but there's masses of them to maintain these big estates. The nice thing about the landscape garden is you don't cut the grass.
No.
You've got sheep.
Yeah, you just graze
you eat them.
Yes. So sort of fattening them up.
It's quite green, really, isn't it?
Yeah.
Compared to blasting lots of petrol fumes all over the place.
Yeah, that's very true. But you also, we were talking earlier about... with these monasteries and these big manor houses, you also had your own fish ponds, didn't you, to literally rear your own fish and supply yourselves?
Everybody says about fish ponds in the medieval and the Tudor period, but there is an Italian writer from about 1340s who says you can also have fish ponds just to admire the fish.
Oh, right.
You'd probably eat them as well, but they're very practical in these earlier periods. You'd have an orchard, it could act as a pleasure garden where you can go out hot sunny days so you can get the shade from the trees and later admire the fruit, and then most of it's actually brewed because the drinking water is a bit dodgy.
Yeah.
And then of course there's dovecots as well, and you're not breeding doves just to look pretty flying around the garden.
See, I wondered what the whole point of a dovecot was, to be honest. We were talking earlier, weren't we? And I thought they were just there with doves flying around.
They look very pretty, but mostly you're eating them.
Can I just ask about peacocks? Because you often see those in these sort of homes and houses.
Yes.
And again, when Edna used to work for a stately home, they used to have peacocks going around, and apart from they look very graceful, I mean, I love the way they strut.
And make lots of noise.
Yeah. And they did make a bit of noise, but they were great when the foxes turned up. They're the early warning system. Were they destined for the dinner table, or are they just to look pretty?
In the medieval period, you would actually skin your peacock, cook it, and then put it back into the skin and present it on a big dish in its full finery. And they were having them. There are pictures. Most of them, admittedly, are European, but we probably had wild peacock here as well. Well, in the gardens at least, strutting around the gardens, looking pretty. And Kipling says in his poem about peacocks strutting around the terraces in Victorian periods as well.